Hello, and welcome to the Collective Catapult. Our webinar today is about creating opportunity with community. And our speaker today is Michelle Yee. Michelle is a triple threat artist, a photographer, writer, and she's also the co-founder of SOFIA, which we'll be talking a lot more about in just a minute. I'm the moderator, Ann Urban. I'm an advertising professor at OCAD University and also principal and creative director of Urban & Company. So Michelle, welcome. Where are you joining us from?
I'm here from San Francisco.
San Francisco, lucky you. Michelle, I know that you are a founding member of the photography collective SOFIA, which is the Society of Females in Art. I just love that. And we're going to discuss today the benefits of joining a collective. I asked where you were today because I know you balance your time between San Francisco, New York, and Toronto, and that you have the support of a creative community of colleagues that have helped transform your life and also helped you grow as an artist. And that's something we'll also be talking a lot more about. Michelle gives back by sharing her insights with image makers on a cusp of their own burgeoning careers. And we're going to discuss SOFIA activities, their mentoring philosophy, and how group sharing is creating opportunities for everyone in the collective. So, Michelle, let's talk about this. We first connected with Michelle this spring when we explored the topic of collectives with, I think it was the Photography and Illustration annual issue in the spring for Applied Arts. And, you know, we felt it was important now for us during Grad Week to delve a little deeper into a further discussion of collectives. And part of what was so intriguing about them is we're seeing them as a bigger trend in the industry. So let's start by having a look at SOFIA's work, if you can get that up. And Michelle, let me start with asking you a little bit about SOFIA and where the idea first came from.
Okay. Well, SOFIA began in the summer of 2014, back when I still lived in Toronto. And it's taken a while for us to sort of massage like what our mission was, because at the time, like, there weren't really a lot of collectives. There wasn't like a lot of models for us to follow. So in the beginning, we had a lot of conversations around like, what are we doing here? You know, the need was there. Like, we were all working professionals at the time, but we were mostly working in silos. You know, we found that we were only really, we were only seeing each other's work like when it was finished, when it was out in the world. But we were really missing the like collaboration and spark and that rapid exchange of ideas that happens when you're in school. And we wanted to have that environment again.
Yeah, I actually remember your quote from the article where you said, I think we were tired of working alone and in silos all the time. We're waiting for parties to see each other.
So yeah, that's where the original idea came. Like, people were always talking about starting a collective. But what really made the difference is we actually followed up with that conversation by scheduling a meeting. And that's, I feel like, when we really started.
Wow, interesting. And so just a general question is, why collective versus being wrapped? Or are those two not mutually exclusive?
Well, so some of SOFIA members are represented currently, and then some of us are not, are just independent freelancers. And, you know, we had some conversations early on after SOFIA had sort of come out into the world. One of our other photographers had like won a really prestigious award for some of her editorial work. And we had to have a bit of a debate over whether this was the space for that. And we decided at the time that we wanted to preserve that original energy of SOFIA, which was to create a space for us to sort of hone our voices as artists as opposed to commercializing it. So I guess that was sort of the intention. It wasn't really to further our commercial career. There's more to deepen our relationship with ourselves as artists and to offer support to each other.
And so it's really both, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you become, you know, more comfortable with who you are as an artist, and you show more of yourself in the work that you do, like that actually feeds into your commercial work. But, you know, we just wanted to preserve sort of the root of our creativity as opposed to like immediately attaching to how this can get us jobs in the future, which I think gave us a lot of creative freedom.
I can see that. And then I just want to make sure everyone's tracking with us. So could you just define, I'm curious about what some of Sophia's group initiatives are, but I wonder if you can also just clarify simply, like, what is a collective? Like, in case, you know, some of us haven't heard of that.
Right. Well, like I said, we didn't have a lot of models for what it meant to be a creative or a collective, pardon me. And maybe there were other examples, but we never really attached too much to that. We really gave ourselves permission to just make it into whatever we wanted it to be. So in the beginning, you know, we weren't sure, like, are we going to show projects that we're working on independently? Should we do a group show interpreting the same theme? And ultimately, we decided to do something cohesive and interpret the group theme. So, you know, we didn't really have like a hard and fast idea for what it meant to be a collective. But because we were making work together, because we were sharing our process with each other, you know, I just found it incredibly illuminating and educational just to see like the process that these women that I'd respected so much, like their thought process with, you know, their concept, how they took it to execution. So because that was so powerful, I really felt like what we've made here, we should try to share with others. So when we had our first group show, sort of like as an adjunct to that, you know, we were invited to have like a panel discussion for emerging photographers. And then we were invited to do portfolio reviews at Sheridan College. And those experiences were so validating because we were recognizing that what we had to offer was actually something of value to other people. And so we started to ask ourselves, like, what else can we do? Like, how can we expand? So it's not just about us making work. You know, we really wanted to serve our community. And so that is where the mentorship program came in. I mean, we have all sorts of other ideas for things that we want to do and feel that we can do, but because, you know, there's 6 of us across 3 different cities and 2 different time zones, it's a challenge we haven't yet fully figured out how to work around. Yeah. So,
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's a bit difficult, you know, especially with your demanding schedules to sort of schedule meetings. So for now, we're really focused on the mentorship program.
Wow. All right, let me come back to that in a minute. But that is part of what I was really curious about is your group initiatives. Can you tell us some more about that?
Yeah, like our other group initiatives outside of the mentorship program, you mean, or the mentorship program in specifically?
I think a bit of both, just to help people understand the power and the vision that you have, the power of that kind of collective and the vision that you have for it.
Right. Well, I think you mentioned it in your opening. Like, I really do believe that SOFIA had a truly catalytic effect on my life. Like when I joined SOFIA, to be honest, that very first meeting, I thought I had no idea how I managed to get a seat at this table, but I am not going to let this opportunity go. You know, there's that sort of phrase like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Right. Well, I have a bit of a rebellious tendency, and I used to be very sort of cynical, and I would hear that and I would think, oh, it's just about like leveraging your network. But really, now that I think of that cliche now, and I think of it in the context of SOFIA, you know, being in a collective full of people who have the same values, you know, they have different experiences, but now I'm like in their presence, so I can tap into that. Like a collective is kind of like a way of compounding your collective brain power. You know, when you come together, you're sharing your knowledge, you're sharing your experience, you're sharing your resources, you're sharing your network. And, you know, when you put a group show together, you're also splitting your costs.
Oh, true.
Yeah, so I just feel like by coming together, we recognize through having that group show and the way that people responded to it that, you know, we made something bigger than ourselves. It was bigger than just like the 8 of us that had come together at the time. So, you know, we really want to, at least with the mentorship program initially, is we want to be that sort of touch point where we can foster these connections. I think I personally felt like there was a bit of a gap in between becoming a professional photographer and when I left school. And I just felt like I was lost in the wilderness. And so I feel like the value of forming a collective, especially for people who are just coming out of school, it is a really great way to preserve that community that you create when you're in school. But it's actually better because then you can like curate that group. You know, you can pick out the people that you know that you resonate with, the people that you know you can learn from, the people that you know when you see their motivation and their initiative and then taking action, it will inspire the same in you. So I think for us, it's like, how can we share the experiences that we have? How can we share our knowledge? How can we help, like, you know, nurture people coming out of school and help them develop their own careers?
Yeah, so, it's such a good point. It's not only inspirational, but it's even pragmatic. It's idea sharing. It's also cost sharing. It's space sharing. It is a really wonderful transition. The whole mentoring aspect that SOFIA has really given back to the community.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just felt like it was really important to me because I was mentored by these women by being a part of SOFIA, and just that gift I can never repay. So, you know, I really feel passionate about paying it forward and passing it on however I can.
Well, I was really inspired when you talked about how SOFIA had transformed your life. You know, I really heard your passion come through. It's almost like you're you know, one aspect of the best representation of what it can do and what it has done. That's quite an incredible statement. Yeah,
I mean, I just discovered so many, you know, beautiful things about myself. I just, you know, I was just very fearful before. You know, I was very fearful in taking risks creatively and as a professional, and I just had no one to sort of bounce those fears off of either. And when I saw that, you know, these other women also had the same challenges, like, it really normalized fear, and then it normalized like taking action in spite of fear. And those were things that I really needed to see modeled for me. You know, it's one thing to like read, you know, motivational books and hear things like, you know, you just have to take action. But when you actually see someone who you respect, who you know makes great work, like, try something, realize that it doesn't resonate with them, and they abandon it and they start over again. I mean, that just really, it like lifted me just to even see that and see that it was possible to do something like that. And it was okay.
What an incredible group of people. I'm just curious how you managed to find that particular group. When you talked about in 2014, you were organizing yourself. How did you find this group of individuals?
Well, I was really good friends with some of the original women who had come together. And, you know, I guess we just knew each other. Like, by the time I'd already been like a photographer for probably about 10 years. So, you know, there are like quite a few women in photography, but relative to like the industry overall, there's not that many of us. So we would just kind of, you know, seek each other out. And when I would see their bylines, whether it was in magazines or like in awards annuals, like, I always felt proud of them and happy for them. So you kind of always knew who was out there doing stuff. I guess maybe just in terms of how I happened to be a part of that, like, maybe it's a case of like, they're, you know, being at the right place at the right time, and that I had like, you know, cultivated those relationships enough that I came to mind when they thought of, you know, who should we invite to these initial meetings.
How great. So you were mentored, and you were a mentor and a mentee, all aspects of the benefits of the collective. And you mentioned that it's also, you know, it's not just a career builder, because it extends well beyond that. But I am curious, just on this point of your career, what being in a collective has done for your career that you might not, for example, have been able to do on your own, or maybe not progressed as quickly?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny because I think throughout this journey and like the work that I've created because of SOFIA, like, this is work that I had wanted to be creating all along. When I came out of photography school, I remember telling a friend of mine that I was afraid to make work because I thought people would realize, they would see how lonely I was. And so I just kind of stuffed that down, was like, I'm not going to think about that, I'm not going to do that work. Like, no one wants to know that. I need to be perfect. And, you know, when SOFIA was sort of in its initial stages, when we just settled on this theme, bad behavior, like, I remember some of those early meetings when I talked about like things that I was thinking about exploring to that theme. Like, I'm pretty sure I cried during that meeting. Like, I told them a story that I'd never shared with anyone before. Like, SOFIA created a space where, you know, everything was like valid. You know, all of your ideas were valid, your experiences were valid. And, you know, we were just supported in a way that you know, because I guess even when I was in school and we were doing like critiques, like you're not really getting assignments where it's like, talk about something that really was part of forming your personality, you know, like you don't really get assignments like that. So
that's true.
yeah. So just the fact that SOFIA was like, the initial goal was not about our commercial work. It was not about our careers, that it was all about making personal work. It was about reconnecting with what drew you to become a photographer in the first place. That just opened me up in a way that I'm not sure I could have done any other way.
And yet it feeds your career as well. Like it's all part and parcel, I think, of your growth personally and professionally. One feeds the other.
Yeah, it's you know, I guess there's sort of like this phrase that like you can be, do, and have anything you want, and the order of those words is really crucial, right? It's like, well, if you want to like have a successful photography career, you got to be a successful photographer. And in order to be a successful photographer, like, what does that mean? You have to define what success means to you. You have to look at people who are accomplishing what you want to accomplish and like try to learn from them, and you know, and then you have to take action and do some of those same things. So yeah, being part of SOFIA was like truly a life-changing experience for me.
Wow, I can see that. And great point to turn our attention on to our grads, those up and coming. What do you think are the key challenges that face some of our young image makers in today's market?
Well, I mean, as we all know, the tools for being a photographer are incredibly democratized. They're accessible to anyone. Anyone who has a phone and an Instagram account can be a photographer.
True.
So I think the challenge for people is that it's not as clear. I don't know if it was ever like a clear-cut way to become a photographer, but more so than ever, like the competition is fierce, and there's just a lot of it. But I think, you know, coming out of school, like the thing that people really need to be prepared for is that you have to take responsibility for your own life. You know, when you're in school, somebody gives you an assignment or they tell you have to work in a group, and then you go and do it. But when you're out in the world, like there is no one to tell you what to do. There is no one giving you any assignments. There's no one giving you any deadlines. There's no one even encouraging you to have a goal. So I think that the most important thing for people coming out of school is to really recognize that they have responsibility for themselves. But, you know, I used to think that having a responsibility for my life was a terrifying prospect. But I met a dear friend of mine the other day, and she said, I actually love the idea that I have responsibility for my life because it just gives me so much comfort. I can create the life that I want. So I think when people are looking at, you know, developing a career as a photographer or in any creative field, you know, it feels like it's a big, ambiguous thing. And now what I'm trying to do is whenever I see something that's ambiguous or unknown, this is my opportunity to create what I want. So, you know, if you're responsible for your life, that means you can make it into whatever you want. If you're responsible for your life, you're responsible for your own success and your own failures, and you can choose which you would rather be.
Wow, what a beautiful point of advice. Let's maybe end on a last point then of mentoring. What's the key piece of advice you might have for image makers about to graduate?
Yeah, so I guess to tie in with responsibility, to break that down, I think that it's really important to take initiative and more important to be resilient. You know, when you're entering into a path that has no guarantees, the only guarantee you have for success is that you are making the decision to never give up.
Right. Yeah, what a great piece of advice for life too.
It's all tied together, you know, like your career is like how you're choosing to spend your working life in exchange for how you support your non-working life, you know?
Right.
So if you just take that attitude to everything that you do, and you take responsibility for it, and you take every no as a not yet or not now, and you just don't give up, and you just like really hold the faith that you know you're going to make it work and that no one can deter you, I mean, you're going to be a success. That's how it works.
Boy, what great advice for grads. Thank you very, very much, Michelle, for such an interesting conversation. Thanks for making the time to speak with us today and to pass on all your words of wisdom to our listeners. And to our listeners, thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so wonderful.
Our pleasure. Thank you.